Human design is this fantastic blend of astrology, Western astrology, I Ching, the Kabbalah, and the Hindu Brahmin chakras. And then you put all of those with a sort of blanket of quantum mechanics around it, and you have this amazing, I don't even know what to call it, this blend that generates your information. So it's based on your birth information, which is far more fixed than any subjective test that you do.
Digital audio health by Symatrax.
Welcome to the show, Michaela.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
It's wonderful. Just before the show, we talked about where we're from and the places that we know, and there's a lot of coincidences that we have, or maybe more importantly, some synchronicities. So I'm so glad to have you on the show, my friend. Let the audience know a little bit about your background and sort of steer us towards how you ended up doing what you're doing.
So I'm a lifelong traveler. This is the 8th country I've lived in. I've done 13 international moves, and I don't know how many in-country moves. I've never counted them, and I'm not sure I can remember them all. So I've been moving since I was a child, like 6 months. And I started to learn about people's behavior from a very, very early age. A lot of that was because I was in an unsafe environment and I needed to know what was coming and whether I needed to hide or run or what I needed to do. And as I got older, it became a curiosity for me, living in different countries. Why do people do what they do? What does that look like? And where did that come from? And so I just got deeper and deeper into it. And then I became a child advocate quite naturally because my own childhood had been so difficult. And I didn't want anybody else to experience that. But I can also read behavior and see when things are going awry or where they could be improved for everybody without judgment, without sort of calling anybody bad names or whatever. That's not the point. The point is just, how can we improve this for everyone? Where's it going wrong? And I learned a lot of skills along the way. And when I had my own kids, first thing I realized was, oh no, I don't know what to do. I don't have a particular role model that I want to work from. So I have to learn this. And then they had some challenges that I needed to navigate, plus different school systems, different countries, different languages. There was a lot. So I learned a lot by experience. And then I became a board certified behavior analyst because I wanted to know the science behind what I was looking at. So all of that is a big story, and there's a lot of parts to it. I was a Montessori teacher at one point, and, lots of different pieces go in to the big picture of why I work with parents. And then I added human design into the whole mix because behavior is what you see, but what's going on that you don't see? What's happening within the person and why? Where are they coming from? And I discovered human design quite by accident, really, or perhaps by synchronicity. I'd ignored it. I knew it was there. I just hadn't paid attention to it because I'm a very sciencey person. I have 4 degrees and they're all in science. So, I wasn't paying attention to it. And then somebody I was working with said, no, really, I need you to do your chart. We're having some problems here that I think we can solve. So I got my chart done, gave it to her, and then I watched her like a hawk, like what's going on? And I saw all these looks go across her face, and I was like, I am fascinated. What's happening here? And the next thing I knew, she kind of got this look of relief, and she said, oh, I've got it. Okay, I know exactly what we need to do. And she changed just a few things about how we work together, timelines, that sort of thing. And suddenly everything fell into place very nicely. And I was fascinated. It was like, okay, now how did you do that? Let me go and investigate. And so I went down the rabbit hole of investigating human design to see, well, what happens when I do this? And what happens if I talk to this person? And, and I started testing it on family, friends, and myself, and found that, wow, this really is, there's a lot to this. And I don't really know how to explain to people why it's there. Mm-hmm. But the way I use it, given that I have my science base, is I call it a living science, right? I'm going to do your human design. I'm going to tell it to you, and you go test it. And if you get repeatable results with what you're testing, then you have a successful experiment. And when you know your human design, it shortens the time you spend getting from where you are to where you want to be, because you already have pathways. So working with parents with that is fantastic. Gets rid of so many problems before you even start. That's a long story, but there's a lot in it.
Yeah, and there's so many places that we can go with this. I'm going to stay with the human design for right now. Are there different questions that you're asking that has to do with the person's personality? Like, what sort of things make up human design?
Human design is this fantastic blend of astrology, Western astrology, I Ching, the Kabbalah, and the Hindu Brahmin chakras. And then you put all of those with a sort of blanket of quantum mechanics around it. Mm-hmm. And you have this amazing sort of, I don't even know what to call it, this blend that generates your information. So it's based on your birth information, which is far more fixed than any subjective test that you do. I looked at Enneagram, for example, and my numbers come out different depending on the day, because my answers to the questions are different depending on the day. Right? So I can't really get very far with them. They don't give me solid information. But human design, skeptical or otherwise, that information is going to generate in a very complex chart that I've learned to read and understand. And it gives me themes for people. I don't know anybody else that's doing themes with human design, but I can't not do it. I can't not see it. And it gives me the tools to use to show that person, look, this thing that you always thought was wrong about you were told you talk too much, or this too much, you don't do enough of that. Though that's where your gifts usually lie. So let's find those gifts, because it's conditioning, it's what people have told you that squash that and stop you from your fulfillment. So once we find where those gifts are, we can start to find the conditioning, which is other people's stories that you've taken in and believed. And we start to offload those, and wow, you have so much you can do. If you're raising a child and using human design, you don't have to squash them in the first place because you know better. So wow, it's amazing.
And a lot of people may not realize that the way they operate on a daily basis has to do with the programming that they were. And I don't really like to use the word programming, but when you hear something over and over and over again, you spend one whole year with one teacher. Programming does happen, good and bad, right? Not saying that teachers are bad, but the messages, because everybody comes from a different background. And also parents may not have, they don't have the skills to know that their anger is damaging their child's psyche.
And sometimes it's not even a repetitive thing. Sometimes it's one thing that happens, but the timing of it is crucial, and it gets absorbed by the child. And kids can only make things about themselves. They have no choice because they don't have the life experience to do anything differently. So whatever happens in their environment, it's about them. It's to them. And somehow it's their fault. It comes from them, from their perspective. And so you take those stories in order to protect yourself. So, I got hit that time because I was too loud. I'd better be quiet. Or that bad thing happened because I did X. And it's just something that you absorb about yourself. And there's this running narrative that's in the subconscious that's then telling you, well, you're not a very good person, are you? Because all these things happen because of you. And you start to keep yourself small because, if you go out there, it could be dangerous. If you try things, well, you're going to fail because that teacher told you would. Or that time when something didn't work, everybody laughed at you. Wow, that's one of the worst things that can happen, right, to a child. And then suddenly you have a limitation there that is built like the Great Wall of China. You can't move that thing. It's solid.
It's pretty tough to move it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So children are making decisions about themselves when they're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, where they don't even have the vocabulary or the life experiences, what you say, to make those decisions. And we all need fixed, basically. You know what I mean? Like, we all need someone to help us to overcome even things that we don't even realize that are blocks. And that's why I love what you're talking about is human design, and the different themes that you have when you discover this with people. So can you tell me, or tell the audience, I'm curious too, but tell the audience a little bit more about the themes that you're talking about?
Sure. As I'm going through someone's chart, you start very broad. So this is an energy type, and that gives you some general characteristics. And as you work through it, going into the centers, what's defined, what's not defined, and then you get into the channels, which are the circuits that connect the centers, and the gates, the 64 of those. You're likely to have probably 21, 22 gates that are defined. Now, those are where the real nitty-gritty gems come in. And a theme will come up with those gates. There are certain things, for example, you might be here to challenge the status quo. And that can show up in many different ways. And it'll show up in ways that you are particularly adept at challenging the status quo successfully and replacing it with something that's better. And that could be, if you have a defined throat, for example, something such as doing a podcast is a great way for you to express ideas and inspirations that other people need to hear. And you can do that and challenge the status quo in a way that progresses the situation, that opens people up to doing something differently. That's just one example of a theme that I came across recently for a client. Someone else was very stuck in her business, trying to be very structural and, spreadsheet for this, and I've got this system and this, programming, and that's great, but it didn't work for her. She's very creative and spontaneous, needs to go with the flow. And every time she went over, you see, I'm doing these different sides, right?
Yes.
Every time she went over to I have to be structured and I've got to have a spreadsheet for that, she'd start procrastinating and getting stuck. And
it's not great to do spreadsheets.
I've been trying to do this for 2 weeks now. Why can't I do this? And another thing she would come up with is frequently big pile of paper on her desk. And every conversation we had would be, I just have to get this onto my computer and then I'll be able to That's a classic limitation. It's like you're paddling water and not actually swimming, right? When I just have to do X before Y is keeping you in place. You're not moving forward. Why? And typically it's because either you're doing the wrong thing for you or you're doing the correct thing incorrectly. So it's finding out which of those it is and then going with the flow for you. So the theme for her, she's very creative, and her inspiration comes when she's not pushing. Sitting by a lake skimming stones is when she's going to get her inspiration. Looking at a spreadsheet is not going to light her up. So getting this person to move from the whole spreadsheet structure over to the creative flow, talk the inspiration into the phone. Sure, put it on a spreadsheet later if that's going to scratch that itch, but that's not where your creation is going to come from. So let's do it over here first in the creative space, and then you can move it to where it needs to be. She's much more successful that way. Every now and then, she'll slip back to the spreadsheets, and we have to kind of unravel that a little bit. But there are techniques that when you know how you work, you can see what's not working. You get all these amazing road signs come up that are basically saying, whoa, stop, U-turn. This is not going to work for you right now. And here's something that surprises people, is that sometimes you can start on a path, and that path's great, but then things change, circumstances change, situations change, and it's no longer correct for you. So at that point, you need to find somebody to hand it off to, or a way to conclude things rather than keep going. You know, that time when you can have a job, for example, and it starts off great, and then one day you just think to yourself, why am I still doing this? I hate this. Like, I've been here for 10 years, you know, or why am I doing this? It's that. It stopped being for you. And people get very stuck because of stories when you're a child. Well, you started it, you've got to complete it. You know, nobody likes a quitter, right? But, well, not everything's meant to be completed. So there's a lot of navigating to do with human design, and I love it because it gives you all these pathways. It's just like, ooh, so much to play with.
So much to play with. So I guess a person could think about, if they're procrastinating on doing something, that might be something that needs attention.
Sure, because either the thing they're trying to do is just not going to work for them, or they need to do it a different way. And, you know, you get bogged down in this idea that, well, if I try hard enough.
Yes.
Whoa. Well, okay, but do you really want to spend your life doing that? Or would you like to find the way that it's easy?
Yes.
Because you're not designed to struggle. This whole thing of, if you're not struggling, you're not trying hard enough, is a bill of goods that's been sold to people who struggle and support the people who don't struggle. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a real thing. We don't have to struggle. You just have to find the way that works for you. That's far preferable. And you could do things so much faster when you're doing it easier. It's just, if you think of paddling a canoe, right? You're Canadian, so let's go with this. If you're paddling your canoe against the current, and you've got rapids and what have you, if you're trying to go up the rapids, well, you're not going to get very far very fast, and you're probably going to capsize, and you're going to have a very big problem. Your canoe's going to get scratched up. It's just not going to be fun. If you turn around and go down with the current, well, you're going to move a lot faster, a lot easier. And, you know, I'm going to suggest that's the way you need to go.
Well, I mean, everyone's subscribed to hard work, right?
Right.
And when you work hard, well, you're going to get results. But the thing is then it came along, you know, you have to work smarter. But the thing is, I find is that when I love to do something, time just flies by, and it's so enjoyable. You look up and 2 hours have went by and you didn't even realize it. But when you're working at something tedious, like, oh my God, a spreadsheet, I don't even like opening up an Excel document, you know? Yeah, the same way. And that, to me, even though I need to do it, I find it, and I'm good at it, it hurts my brain. And I think that, talk to me about people who use both sides of their brain, their creative side and the logical side.
First of all, I'd love to point out that you just described beautifully being in flow.
Yes.
In how you're designed, which is when the time flies, and when you're out of alignment. And out of alignment isn't like completely out of the picture, but you're a little off. You're not doing it quite the way you like to do it. And then it becomes tedious. That's simply not your best thing for you to do.
Yes.
It could be somebody else that could do it for you, or a different way to do that thing. Those are ways to look at it. For people who use both sides of their brain, no problem. That's going to be in your chart. So it's very easy for me to see the themes and how to intertwine them. You know, I almost look at it like a hair braid. You know, you can have the strands separately, you can kind of braid them, you can pull them apart again, and you use it according to what you want to get done, how you want to use that. The thing with human design is it's like this big bag of tools, and you have all these beautiful tools, you know how to use them. Now, what are you going to build? And that's your option. That's entirely up to the individual to use what they know about their design. And every step of the way, you test it. I mean, the first thing I tell somebody when they come to work with me is, don't take my word for it. I don't want you to do that. That's not helpful. I want you to test the blue blazes out of this thing, test it every way you can think of, and come back to me, tell me what you found. Because if you're finding difficulty with something, then that is a very good indication that there's conditioning there, there's stories that you have absorbed and made it mean you. So here's one of the things that I like people to know, is that I could start telling you things that I think about you, right? Like, oh, I think your blonde hair should be black, or, you know, maybe wear contact lenses instead of glasses. Like, I'm picking stuff out that I can see.
You notice,
Right. None of that means anything about you. Nothing about you. What it's telling you is my lens and what I think, what I'm judging people and things by. So you don't have to pay any attention whatsoever to what I just said, because it's not about you. It's about me. And that's something very key to know as an adult, that when people tell you things that are wrong with you, you need to fix, they're telling you a lot of interesting information about them and nothing about you.
That's right. And, you know, people who want to try things out, let's say start a business, the last people they should be talking to are people who would never start a business, because they are not going to encourage you. They are going to scare the living heck out of you. And it's going to the people and getting the counsel or advice or suggestions from people who are in the industry that you want to go into, if that's what you want to do, if you want to get more information about something. But I really love that you brought that up, because it discourages a lot of people to go into business for themselves when they're asking the wrong people. I mean, they don't know that they're asking the wrong people.
Right. And one of the things I would look out for there, a really key thing, is when somebody comes to you and says, in whatever way, you know, they jump in the inbox all the time, but they'll come to you with a, you know what, I have this 3-step program or this 7-step, and it's like, okay, if you're considering a business and you haven't started yet, let me save you a lot of time and angst. Just hit delete, because the only way those things sell is by the people who are trying to sell it to you having bought it in the first place. They don't know what they're telling you. Another person cannot possibly tell you how to do you. And your business is you. It's what you're bringing. And if it's not fun, don't do it. So, you know, if you're coming from the energy of, well, I have to work hard and I've got to follow these 7 steps, and I don't really like cold calling people, but I'm going to, it's like, oh, good Lord, you know, could we just hit the stop button right now? That is not the way to do it. If it's not fun, you're doing it the wrong way.
Yeah, and it needs to be enjoyable. Life needs to be enjoyable.
Yeah, why would it not?
Why would it not? Yes.
Where's the benefit from not?
Yeah, that's right. So talk to us about the component that astrology has in our life.
Well, if you think of the moon, where the moon is in relation to the earth affects the tides.
Yes.
We know this, you can see it, it's proven, it's scientific and so on. Now, I'm a former nurse and I worked in a psychiatric ward for a while, and I can absolutely assure you that when it comes to a full moon night, the nurses are all slugging it out for whose turn it is to be on the ward because they don't want to be. It goes a little difficult around there. So that's just the moon. And you can see these big effects. So where the various planets and some of the major asteroids, where they are in relation to the Earth when you're born, affects different, it's going to sound a little woo and a little out there, but, you know, we have radio waves coming into the planet all the time. You get stuff from the sun, you get radio waves coming. I mean, we use these, we're using them now on the internet. But people find it a little difficult when they think, well, that affects you when you're born, but it does. And they also affect you prior to birth. About 3 months prior gives you your design in human design. You have 2 columns of numbers. One is the planet's personality, and that's on the day of your birth. And the other one is your planet's by design. And this is genetic information that's come to you. It's like lineage. And it gets a little complicated to explain, but the placement of the planets affects how you are, how you show up.
Well, it has to. I mean, if the moon can pull the water from the shore and put it back 12 hours later, what's it doing to our bodies? What's it doing to our brains? I mean, and so I've always been fascinated with that. And I've always understood that the moon has way more power than what we really give it credit for. I mean, you know, a lot of people just don't even have a concept of that. But when you add all the other elements, the other planets, and what's going on in our outer world, I just think it's amazing. Because there's so much energy that we are affected by, and sometimes we are not in tune with those energies. Can you help us learn how to recognize this more?
Well, I'd say that the best thing I can tell you is to get familiar with your chart. I mean, yes, I do human design readings, and I'm totally going to tell you, come to me and I'll tell you all about it.
Sure, why not?
But it literally is, that is the best way for you to take the guesswork out and get the information that's particular to you. And then, like I said, go test it. Go see, does this actually work the way I'm telling you? Do you find this? Do you like that? How about this piece? You know, and we figure that stuff out. But it really shortens how long it takes for you to get from where you are to where you want to be, because you learn all that stuff in a very short space of time. You don't have to do the trial and error. But we do tend to think, oh, well, the moon, you know, I can see it and it's just there and, you know, it's not a big deal. But well, yeah, it is. If we don't have the moon, then we don't have gravity, and we don't have, you know, the tides, and we don't get night light, and you know, there's a ton of things we don't get that you can see it without having to believe anything, right? So people get a little jittery about that, I think, because they don't know where to place it. What do you do with that? You know, if you go with religion, then you go to a religious teacher and they'll tell you what to believe, and you go do that thing. And that's fine. You've been given that. But now I'm asking you to learn about yourself for yourself. And nobody else is going to tell you that, you know, yes, this is good, that's not. Nobody is designed badly. Let me just say that. Nobody is designed to be bad. We're all perfectly designed. The question is, are you in alignment with it? And when you learn what your signs are, your particular signs, then you can start to pick it up. And it's one of the first places actually to investigate. So, for example, 70% of the world's population are either a pure generator or a manifesting generator. And what this means is that person does better with binary options when they're making a decision. So rather than saying, hey, what do you want for dinner tonight? It's better to say, do you want Italian or sushi? And then that person's going to say, oh, actually, I'd like some Indian food. But they got there because you gave options, right? So that person will typically find that multiple choice questions, if they're going to do an exam, are easy because they can spot the patterns and they can just figure them out, and they don't even have to study the subject. I find that. I'm a generator. That works for me, right? Okay. So there's that. And then when you're out of alignment, the sign that you get, and it's a whacking great big road sign, it's neon, is frustration. And the frustration is multi-level. It's not just the sort of pulling out my hair, or I'm so frustrated by this. But it's also, if you're pushing on a door, you can hit it with your shoulder, you can kick it, you can do all the things. It's not opening. right?
Mhm.
And then someone else comes along and they pull the door and it opens.
Yeah.
You are being frustrated when you're trying to open the door by pushing it.
Mhm.
It won't let you. It stops you. And that's the ultimate, like, seriously, you're going the wrong way for you. That's the biggest stop sign, is when it just won't work no matter what you do. And
Mhm.
that's when you can recognize, oh, hey, I don't know why, but this just isn't for me. Let me turn around and see what else is. And there's a whole process you go through to learn what it feels like in your body when you're making the right decision. Because here's a clue. When you're using your head and it makes sense,
Mhm.
there's every chance you're going in the wrong direction. Because your head is full of information from outside. It's
Yes.
other people's stuff. And, you're making a decision from other people's stuff.
Yes.
So even if it's logical,
Yeah.
right? Logic
It can be very logical. It's
yeah.
not right.
Logic has a wonderful way of going wrong with confidence.
Mhm.
Right? You can build this beautiful path and it's just all the stones are perfect and everything looks as it should. But it took you to a swamp because, and you were heading for the beach, but you got to the swamp because you followed the logical path
Yeah.
instead of actually looking up and saying, oh, hey, I want to go that way.
Right. And so, yeah, looking up or looking down or looking over, just look somewhere else, right? So, not the brain. Where in the body do we resonate and look?
Much depends on your definition, like not your definition per se. Well, yes. So definition is how many circuits you have, whether they're all joined or what they are. So if you have a single circuit, a single definition, then you have one way of making your decision, and it will depend on the dominant center that's defined. So if your sacral center is defined, that is always going to be the dominant feature, and that's a gut response. That's literally, you feel so excited. It's like, oh, I can't wait to do this thing. And you're just fired up, right? And your energy's up and everybody around you is up. That is a generator that's lit up by great things. Now, the same one, if they're looking at this decision to make, and remember, this is binary, right? Yes or no. Do I want this? Yes or no. If you're getting that kind of, I don't feel perfect about the, I feel a little antsy and I'd quite like to go that way now. That's a no. There isn't a maybe. There's only a yes or a no.
Yeah.
So it's learning to feel those feelings and to trust them. And that's the part that most people get stuck on is, well, yeah, I felt that way, but it didn't make sense. And the head is such a strong tool because we're taught from little. Use your head. Think about it. What does your brain tell you? Like, you get a lot of different ways where you're told, use your common sense. What's wrong with you? Think about it. But these are not the places where you make your decisions. These are the places where you access other people's decisions.
Right.
And, you can be controlled from there. But it's not your best place, So we often hear ideas from others, we hear beliefs from others, and then we believe them thinking they're ours. But did you actually examine that and check? Does it really resonate with you, or are you just saying that because everybody else did? And we have a huge problem with that these days with all the input from social media, especially, where people just take stuff at face value. And, even when things are posted and there's an article there, people aren't even reading the articles. So they're making a decision based on a headline. Wow, that is so out of alignment, I can't even reel it in. Like, it's just, wow, you lost the plot at that point.
Yes. Well, the headline is to grab your attention and to make you believe something until you read the article and realize that there's way more information that you needed before you made your own decision. Just such great advice. You're listening to the Rhonda Grant Show right now, whose podcast has been treated with digital audio health by my sponsor, Symatrex. And today we are speaking with Michaela Gaffen Stone. Please let the audience know how they should reach out to you if they wanted to know more or find out how they can learn more about what you teach.
Sure. Well, I have a website, which is gaffenstone.com. So easy to find, Gaffen, stone like a rock. And there I am, gaffenstone.com. And you can do your chart for free there. So you put in your information, generate a chart, download it, and there will be hyperlinks at the side that you can follow through and get a little bit of information about your chart. I don't see any of that information. I don't know any of your private details. I only see your chart if you email it to me. I don't get that. So be assured it's all very private. And then there are places where you can book readings with me if you want to know what you're looking at, because there's a lot there. You can also email me. The email is Mikki at Gaffenstone, which is Mikki at gaffenstone.com. And you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram really easily. There's only one Michaela Gaffen Stone. So, yeah, that's where you find me. And I'm very responsive. So send me a message and we'll get a conversation going.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. When people know what their signs are, their horoscope signs, and they read their horoscopes, is that a big picture for them or a small picture compared to what you're able to do? Because this is what I think the audience are going to will want to know.
So if you're reading your horoscope and it's something that's sort of mass generated rather than specifically for you, then it's fun, it's cute. Sometimes it can get you, but it's just fun. It's like reading a comic. It's not anything to live your life by, honestly. I enjoy mine. I'm a Gemini. It's, and I fit a lot of the characteristics. So sure, why not? But that's not really about you. That's 1/12 of the world's population. And it's very generic. If you read them carefully, it's very generic. Human design, what I'm doing is literally your personal blueprint. There is nobody else like you. And this is literally all about you, not about anybody else. So the birth time, I have to tell you, is important.
Yes. Okay.
That is important. Get as close to that as you can. And for those people who are saying, but I don't know my time. Okay, I've been asked that many times. Do you know the part of day, whether, morning, midday, nighttime, middle of the night? The closer we can get, I then start to generate a bunch of charts and we start to find commonalities and so on. I can't get it perfectly. It's not possible without your time, but I can get it pretty darn close. Mm-hmm. So we can still do a lot with that. But reading your horoscope it's a fun pastime, but don't take it seriously.
Mm-hmm. Well, because there's so many other influences based on where the planets were, where the moon was at the time you were born and things like that I have learned. And that's about the length of my knowledge when it comes to that. And a lot of people could surely benefit if they're stuck in life, or sometimes people think they'd like to do something, but they don't have the confidence because they just don't know if that's the right path that they should be taking, perhaps because they've went so many different ways that they lose confidence that this here way is the way.
Right. And something I'd like to pick up on there, because this can be so life-changing for people. Mm-hmm. You may have an undefined G center, which is the center of personal direction, and it's the center of identity. And people that have that undefined typically will try a great many different things in life. And here's the piece that you didn't hear before. This is perfectly correct for you. It's not a fault. It's not a problem. It's not something you need to stop per se, but it is something that now you've done that, or you've been doing that, you can look at all the different things and see what parts did you like, what parts worked, what parts didn't, and you start to self-select from these parts. Which bits do you want to incorporate into you and how you're going to do things next? But some people are different. They do show up different. Their identity shifts, not because they are flighty or because they're now there's a big difference between being a chameleon and fitting in, changing you to sort of melt into your background. That's not healthy. That's not the same thing. Fitting in is not the same as belonging. Belonging is when you're different, you do things differently, and you're accepted anyway. But also you accept yourself anyway. That's the key part. You don't have to be like other people. So if you're doing lots of different things and trying different ways, I'm going to tell you, you probably have an undefined G center, and that's perfectly fine for you. The question is, what are you going to do with that now that you've got it? But view it as an asset rather than as a problem. And then when it comes to confidence, your confidence rises. I can tell you from personal experience, it rises exponentially when you understand your design and you know that, oh yeah, this actually works for me. I recognize this. This feels good. I have confidence in this because I know this is what I'm here to do. And human design does show you your purpose if you feel that you want to follow it. Everybody has a purpose. The question is, are you interested? Not everybody is. And I'm not here to tell you you need to be. It's your choice.
Wonderful. Just such great teachings. This could go on for a very long time.
I'll come back.
Yes, exactly. Would love you to come back. Let the audience know if you feel that your life has been scripted or that you've crafted your journey.
Oh my gosh. I would say that I have had a great many things that have first of all, when I was a child, that happened to me. The question is, what do you do with that? And different people will respond differently. Your design will affect that for sure, because it affects what you're bringing to the table. But you always have a choice. You know, that gap between the event and what you do about it is what Viktor Frankl called your power. It's your space for response. You can always choose your response. If you react to things, or if you go into victim mode where everything happens to you, well, then you've given your power away. And as long as you give your power away, there's not a lot you can do because you gave it to somebody else, whether they wanted it or not. And a big feature for me in life is blame and shame. If I could eradicate anything from the planet, it would be those things, because the rest would sort itself out. All the wars, all the hunger, all the things would be resolved if people didn't have blame and shame over stuff. It makes us make really weird decisions. But, you know, if you're blaming somebody else for where you are in life, well, you just gave all your responsibility to them. They don't want it, and they can't do anything with it, even if they did. So you're stuck. And then if they choose to accept the weight of the responsibility you gave them, then they're stuck. So where was that helpful? So blame tends to make people want to push everything away. Don't blame me. Don't blame me. It's very negative. Responsibility is like, okay, that was the thing. Now what am I going to do to make it different? I didn't like that. Let's not do that again. And you just don't go into the whole blame and victim stuff. That's so negative. There's a secondary gain quite often for people where, well, I get attention when I'm a victim. I get attention when I tell people how awful my life is, and they all say, oh dear, poor thing. But is that really what you want? Like, let's raise your self-respect up a little from that, shall we? And not have that be rewarding. Somebody else's pity is really not helpful. It doesn't get you anywhere. So there's a lot of those things that you can unpack with your human design and offload. And if you've been in victim mode, well, the good news is you can get out of it. So yeah, victory, right?
Yeah. Some people don't recognize that that's what they're doing.
Oh, for sure.
They've done it for so long that and they're comfortable there. It's what they
Very
know.
much so.
They're skilled at it. It's a skill that they,
Yeah, and that's exactly the person that I want to talk to.
Exactly. That's why I wanted to talk about it, because there's people out there that said, I didn't realize I was doing that.
Oh, I love to talk to those people.
Yeah.
Particularly if they're ready. Now, I'll give you a little like inside piece of information here, but when I'm talking to somebody looking at whether we're going to coach together or not, I don't say yes to everybody because not everybody's a fit. And if they're not a fit, I'll give resources and say, you know, okay, off you go and have a nice life. No problem. But I listen for certain language when a person's talking with me. And if they have a lot of but, this stops me, or but that's happening, then this is not going to be somebody I can work with, because they're not yet ready to do anything different. Right. They're not ready to step up and try something different. And I'm not here to force anybody to do anything. I'm not in the energy of forcing stuff. That's just, just total waste of energy. I'm not here for it. Yes. But when somebody's here saying, you know what, I've just realized I do this and this, or what do you think that's about? Okay, if they come with open language, then we can play and we can get all kinds of things moved, and it just opens up your life. Why wouldn't you want that? Like you have one shot that we know of on this planet. That's the one thing you can be sure of. You don't know how long it's for, but I can't think of any reason why it should be more miserable than it ever needs to be. So, it can be a very happy life. It's your choice. And a lot of people don't like being told it's a choice. And those are the people that, let's have a look. Where are you a victim? Because if you don't have a choice, you're being a victim. Right? There is, at some point, always a choice. Now, yes, you might have financial hardship, for example. Okay, but what are we going to do from there? You don't have to stay in it. What are we going to do from there? Doesn't mean that I'm going to make you a millionaire in 2 months, but it just means that we can move from where you're at. So what will that look like?
Beautiful. Yeah, and it's wonderful. And thank you very much, because sometimes people may feel that they don't have a choice. And I honor you for addressing that, because it could affect a lot of people that are listening. What extraordinary experience have you found in your life?
Whoa.
Is there one? You did tell us a couple.
Wow. Holy smokes. I have been fortunate enough to do a lot of travel. So I guess different parts of that, like I've been hang gliding in Nepal with my kids. I got my kids hang gliding, and that was probably not what most responsible parents would do, but hey, we all had a blast and we lived. Wow. Different experiences, different travels. I traveled in Singapore with the Crown Princess. That was fun. That opened a lot of doors that wouldn't have otherwise been open. Yeah, I'm very open to new experiences. And so I think I've had a lot of them. That's kind of, I don't like the, you can't do this. And I have found in my life when people say, what are you, nuts? You're not going to do that. Those are usually my best moves. Those are the biggest, bravest, and best moves is when people tell me I've lost the plot. So, what's your key? That would be something to look out for, is when people are trying to hold you back. What from?
Well, I'm glad that you said you took your kids hang gliding, because I took my kids to walk across a bed of coals.
Okay.
I think we should always take our kids to do something that's outside of the comfort zone and just really on the edge, because it helps them know that it's not a scary thing to take a step forward, and even 4 or 5 steps forward into something that most people would not be comfortable with. And so I really love that you shared that. You're the first guest I've had on the show that said they went and did something with their kids that, was kind of dangerous.
Oh, we went
because we're protecting them their whole lives, right? And then we want to do something like that. Sorry, I interrupted you. What did you want to say?
I was just going to say we went whitewater rafting on the Indus River as well, which was pretty wild.
That's pretty wild.
And we walked on some high ledges with no safety rails or anything in Ladakh, which is very high up in northern India.
Yes.
I've taken them to do a lot of stuff that other people say, really? But that's my parenting style, is to try different things. Both my kids will now pack a backpack and go traveling and not think twice. Yes. I like that for them.
I do too. It really lets them branch out for sure. And I have one that does and one that doesn't. And so it just depends on the comfort level and the stage of that they're at in their life as well, doesn't it?
does. And the other thing is both of them know they can. That's the thing. What they choose is up to them, but they know they can. And I think I love that for any child. Know that you can. For any adult, you can. You don't have to, but you can.
You can.
That's such a different energy.
It is a different energy. I'm so pleased that you reached out to me and we ended up speaking and you're on my podcast. It's been wonderful having you on the show. You've talked about so many things that are near and dear to me, and I like to know more about everything. So thank you so much for being on the show.
You're very welcome, and I have really enjoyed our conversation. It's been lovely.
Thank you very much. We'll have you back.
Ooh, yes, please.
Thank you for listening. Theme song for Courting Your Soul is Sun on the Water, composed and performed by John Park Wheeler.